Let's talk about a real pop culture puzzle, the 2025 Minecraft movie. This was a film that, depending on who you asked, was either one of the worst things ever made or one of the best. It's like it existed in two different realities. So let's dig in and figure out what was going on. Okay, so in one corner, you have the professional critics. And let me tell you, they did not hold back. The reviews were brutal. The New York Post called it a 101-minute lobotomy. Ouch. And honestly, that pretty much sums up how most critics felt. But that is only half the story. Not even.
Because in the other corner, you have this number. That's $955 million worldwide. So how in the world does a movie that's being called a lobotomy go on to make nearly $1 billion? That's the big question, right? And that's what we're going to unpack.
To really get this, you first have to understand the sheer scale of this thing. This wasn't just a successful movie. It was a full-blown blockbuster phenomenon, and its success went way beyond just that one big number. So you had Jared Hess, the guy who directed Napoleon Dynamite, and you put Jason Momoa and Jack Black in the lead roles. What you got was an instant global sensation. I mean, just look at Germany. Over 3 million people went to see it, which earned it the Golden Screen Award. That's a huge deal over there, an award they only give to movies that tons of people show up for. So yeah, this wasn't just another hit movie. It was a massive cultural event. So, what was the secret sauce here? Why did audiences, and especially the die-hard fans of the game, just fall in love with this film? Well, it really seems to boil down to a perfect mix of three key ingredients. First, the visuals were absolutely spot on. Second, the energy, the humor, the cast, it was all just so much fun. And maybe most importantly, this movie was basically a giant love letter written directly to the fans. Let's start with how it looked. The look of this film was just perfect. They totally nailed the game's unique, blocky world. The CGI was so vibrant and fun, and it just pulled you right in. If you've ever spent hours playing Minecraft, seeing those biomes and, seeing a creeper on the big screen, it was pure magic, an absolute delight.
And then you've got the cast. I mean, Jack Black as Steve, it was perfect casting. He brought that classic, high-energy Jack Blackness that audiences just eat up. And Jason Momoa was surprisingly charming and funny. Together, they were this fantastic duo that just carried the whole vibe of the movie.
But here's the real kicker, the movie's secret weapon, fan service. This thing was absolutely loaded with inside jokes, references to crafting, little nods to game mechanics, all stuff that only a true player would get. And that made the fans feel seen. It was like the filmmakers were saying, hey, we see you, we get it, this one's for you.
All right, so that's why audiences were cheering in the aisles. But now let's flip the coin. While the fans were having the time of their lives, the critics, well, they were cringing. And their reasons were just as clear and consistent. When you read through all the reviews, you start to see a pattern. Critics basically hammered the movie for the exact same three things: a weak story, crazy over-the-top visuals, and a type of humor that they just found totally empty.
And isn't this fascinating? The very same vibrant, fast-paced world that audiences loved was slammed by critics as sensory overload. They felt like the non-stop action and chaotic CGI made it feel less like a movie and more like a really long, really loud YouTube clip that didn't have any point.
And the humor? Oh man, this is where you really see the divide. What fans thought was hilarious and just plain fun, critics called silly and incoherent. The very same jokes were landing in two completely opposite ways, just depending on who was in the audience.
But really, at the end of the day, it all came down to this for the critics. All that spectacle, all that flash, couldn't hide a story that was just paper thin. They felt the characters were flat, with no real depth or emotional journey for them to get invested in.
So what you end up with is this massive gap, a divide you can actually see in the data. It's not just a small difference of opinion. It really is like two totally different groups of people watched two completely different movies.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores. The critics are rotten 48%. The audience, a fantastic 85%. That's not a disagreement, my friends. That is a chasm.
And you know what's really wild? All those terrible reviews had exactly zero effect. None. The movie just steamrolled through the box office. It became the third highest grossing film of the entire year and the second highest grossing video game movie of all time. The critics just didn't matter.
So here it is, the whole puzzle laid out.
The very things that made this movie a spectacular blast for fans were the exact same things that made it a chaotic mess for critics. The bright visuals, the silly humor, the simple plot, it was all just a matter of who was watching.
Which kind of leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? The Minecraft movie was, by all critical standards, a failure. But for culture, for the box office, it was a massive triumph. So it makes you wonder, what's the real measure of a good movie? Is it what the experts say? Or is it just the purest simple joy it brings to its audience? What do you think?